working or you can't get a hold of them. And it's got, it's got what you need to know, how to purify water, what things you should have on hand in your grab-and-go kit, and it walks you through the preparedness process step by step. So you don't have to do it all at once, but, it's like Lao Tzu is, the famous quote from Lao Tzu is, the journey of 1,000 miles begins at the first step. So promise yourself to start taking steps, because I guarantee you that we live in an age when you're going to see failures, massive failures. I can't guarantee you when you're going to see them and when they're going to hit you. I don't have that information. But I can guarantee you that just by the nature of what man is doing to the planet, that we're disrupting the natural systems of the planet that have kept weather and, oxygen, ozone systems. The whole natural systems of the planet are in array because of what mankind's been doing. And I can guarantee you that these are going to bite us pretty badly, and unless you die young or die soon, you're going to see some major stuff happening, and you're going to be glad that you had developed some self-reliant skills and some preparedness, because you're going to need it. Someday, somewhere, not too far from now, you're going to need it.
What are some of the herbs that you're talking about that you should actually put into your preparedness kit?
Well, tea tree oil is valuable for penetrating the skin. When you have like an infected knuckle and you put Neosporin on it and it does nothing because it doesn't get through the skin, you put tea tree on it, and it's a very small molecule from the African tea tree, and it goes through fingernails and toenails to some extent, and it penetrates skin quite well and will zap a lot of infections. So that's one thing. Another one that's really good to have is hyssop. That's something that a lot of people don't ever think about. But according to Michael Tiara, who is one of the world's top herbalists, he was sent by Richard Nixon to China when they first opened trade with China in a cultural exchange. And he says, according to Chinese medicine, it's often used for lung infections and lung problems. And so, for instance, in this day and age of extreme drug-resistant tuberculosis, Michael Tiara says that hyssop is, to his knowledge, the only herb he knows of that's effective against active tuberculosis. So, if you have a case of either things are down and there's a nasty lungs infections or, lung kind of stuff going around, you can drink hyssop. And my wife had a very nasty antibiotic-resistant pneumonia, and it could have killed her. It wasn't responding to antibiotics, and we made a very strong tea of hyssop, and it did. It did respond to that. And similarly, colloidal silver, though it's not an herb, is 2,000 years ago, Alexander the Great did not know a damn thing about germ theory, but he did know that if he stored water for his troops in silver urns, his troops didn't get sick. That if they stored water in wooden kegs and skin bags, goat skin bags, that something would happen to that water after a few days. It would turn, and his troops would start having vomiting and diarrhea. And a soldier on the battlefield, his vomit and diarrhea is not really good for much. But he knew that if he stored it in silver urns, that his troops didn't get sick. Well, it turns out that charged silver particles have this almost magical property where they're toxic to all known pathogenic bacteria, but not toxic to human beings. There's plenty of metals that kill bacteria, but they also kill people. So silver is kind of the one magic one that kills the bacteria and doesn't kill people. So it has something to do with the bacteria's ability to metabolize oxygen, and it basically knocks that out. So they smother to death effectively. Now, the other magical property of silver, which sounds kind of like the tooth fairy and Santa Claus, is that it doesn't kill your good bacteria in your gut. And you say, oh, yeah, right, it kills the bad ones, it doesn't kill the good ones. How does it do that? Well, it turns out that the same extra thick cellular wall that protects probiotic bacteria from full-strength stomach acids also happens to protect them from the silver penetrating the cellular wall and causing them to not metabolize oxygen properly and die. So that's another thing, is having a colloidal silver generator in your go bag, and so that in the event that maybe you or someone in your family gets an antibiotic-resistant infection like MRSA, methicillin-resistant staph infection, the flesh-eating bacteria. Or B, in a disaster, what do you see in a disaster? People are cold, they're wet, they're hungry, they're not clothed properly, the sanitation is terrible, and they get sick, and disease spreads quite rapidly. So having a little pharmaceutical in your pharmacy in your bag where you can make your own buckets of colloidal silver, in an hour's time, you can make a quart every hour, that could be a lifesaver for you and your family and your friends. So these are a number of things that you should have. There's other things like garlic. Raw garlic you can eat the cloves and it'll get rid of intestinal parasites. You can put it on fungus and it'll burn like crazy between your toes, but it'll kill the fungus. You can put honey in wounds, and there's a lot of data that indicates that wounds heal faster with honey than with like regular antibiotic.
Well, isn't honey also an antihistamine?
Local honey tends to help immunize you from local pollens, I've heard.
Is that it?
And I'm not so sure about the antihistamine, but I do know that it was used in World War I. They found that it was very effective in wounds, and especially if they didn't. And often, wounds healed faster with honey than they did with traditional antibiotics, and especially in those days, the antibiotics weren't that great. But nowadays, with antibiotic-resistant bugs, we're seeing antibiotics not being so great again, for certain bugs.
Like you were mentioning, the superbugs, and now the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, MERS.
Yeah.
So,
that is something where, to be honest with you, what you really want to have on hand is two things for that. You want to have a nebulizer. I got a really nice nebulizer on Amazon from Omron. Omron is a really well-known international electronic controls company. For very reasonable money, I bought a nebulizer. And about a year ago, I had gotten, I think it was the Mexican flu or whatever, and it nailed me really badly for a day or two. But then I had this lingering cough that just wouldn't go away. And my son said, "Dad, use your nebulizer in colloidal silver." Because drinking it, your kidneys take the silver out of your bloodstream pretty quickly, and it's not really effective at getting into the lungs unless you breathe it into the lungs with a nebulizer. I found that one 15-minute session breathing colloidal silver, ionic silver, into my lungs with a nebulizer, and it kicked the cough.
Wow.
And I repeated that 3 or 4 times, and it never came back. But I suffered with that cough for like a month before I used the nebulizer, and after 10 minutes with the nebulizer, the cough stopped. It was really amazing.
Matt, stand by. We've got to take our news break. Exonation, Matt Stein is my guest this hour. www.whentechfails.com and www.mattstein.com. And Matt and I will be back on the other side of this commercial break. So whatever you do, don't go away. We'll be back after the news. Are you considering calling a psychic to read your situation? Then consider David Champion, a psychic medium for more than 20 years with thousands of readings under his belt. David Champion will make you feel comfortable. He has proven to be honest and accurate. He's a straight shooter. There's no guesswork. What he sees is what you get. While he is a medium, most of the calls focus on relationships, not only love, but work, school, neighbors, and more. Need help with finding a job and preparing for the interview? Are you dealing with people who are obstacles in your path? For more information, go to davidchampion.com, $1.50 per minute paid by credit card with a minimum of 30 minutes. For your reading with David Champion, call 1-877-702-8598. That's 1-877-702-8598. Now you can dial in to listen to the X Zone Radio Show from anywhere in the world with Rob McConnell 24/7, 365 by dialing 213-401-0080. That's 213-401-0080. If you have a mobile phone or landline, the X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is now at your beck and call at 213-401-0080. That's 213-401-0080, 24/7, 365.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Welcome back, everyone. Matt Stein is my guest this hour. He's the author of When Disaster Strikes and When Technology Fails. Two websites, www.whentechfails.com and www.mattstein.com. You know, Matt, I'm always amazed when you and I talk. Today, here we're talking about herbs, and it seems that the people in the olden days knew a lot more about taking care of the body and cleansing it as well as curing it than we know today.
Oh yeah, but it's a two-way thing. There were people who were specialists in herbs that knew a lot. But nowadays, you can have superfoods and herbs from all over the world, whereas in the old days, you were much more limited to what grew locally. So it's kind of a mixed blessing. We also have poisonous toxins from all the chemicals that we've developed, thousands of new chemicals every year, many of them carcinogenic. And in the old days, they didn't have to deal with that. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. We've got more tools, and we got more stuff to fight. So it's a mixed blessing.
What are your concerns, if any, on the GMO foods that are coming out today?
Extremely concerned. The data, there's a wonderful book. I don't know if you ever had them on there. What is it? It's Jeffrey Smith's the book about GMO foods, and it's something deception. Anyway, I'll Google it. But there's a lot of scientists who found disturbing results in their tests on animals with GMO food. So it looks like food, it acts like food, it smells like food, it tastes like food, but it doesn't behave like food when it's eaten. So, for instance, cows eating GMO corn have troubles digesting it. If you have a field of GMO corn next to a field of non-GMO, the geese will all go to the non-GMO and none of them will go to the GMO corn. If you have a trough of GMO corn and a trough of non-GMO corn, the cows will eat every last bit of the trough of non-GMO corn before they'll eat the GMO corn. So something in them knows it's not good for them. The famous French study with all of the rats with tumors. I mean, those rats looked horrible if you saw those pictures of them, just loaded with giant tumors after eating GMO food. So it's like they're telling us how great it is, and it's going to solve the world's food problems, and yet they're hiding the data that shows that it's not good for us, and that each individual GMO food, to be done right, would need to be tested massively like a drug to see if it really does act like food in the body, or if it acts like something else, if it's poisonous, and toxic over the long run. I mean, there's apparently, like, you eat multiple generations of the corn, then people get sterile. Rats are sterile. Well, you assume if it does it to rats, it might do it to people too. So maybe it's a great plan to reduce the population of the planet, which certainly needs reducing, but I'd rather reduce it voluntarily rather than being sterile because I ate a bunch of corn chips and tortillas. So it's a scary thing, and I think that labeling it is the only sane way to go. And unfortunately, big business in America is really fighting that. I know, Russia got rid of the GMO food, and a lot of other countries have mandatory labeling if they even allow it in the country. But here in America, corporations rule. So basically, the only way to make sure you're not getting it is to buy organic and eat organic. And even that, the big agribusiness is trying to relax the organic laws so that they could qualify GMO as organic, and people are fighting it, but it's scary stuff.
Between chemtrails and the information coming out on GMOs, you don't know what to do, who to trust.